The final interpersonal effectiveness skill that we're going to focus on is called Dear Man. Dear Man is the last step on our building blocks that focuses on assertive communication. So we've been stressing the importance to our clients of maintaining and building and maintaining that self-respect, so sticking to their values. We've talked about actively listening to the other person, and now it's time for us to be able to assert our own wants, needs, desires, etc. So the goal here is that assertive communication can help us do those things, but it can also help us to set and maintain boundaries and help clients to learn how to say no and feel confident in their right and ability to do so. These skills are meant to be used together, but they can be used independently. And often when we present them in group, it can feel fairly overwhelming to people to see 7 new skills that they need to learn. So we often encourage them to choose at least one where they feel would be more beneficial for them to focus on making some changes around or learning how to use that skill a little more effectively. They do work best when we can do them all together. So the very first skill in Dear Man stands for describe. When I talk to clients in group about describing, I refer them back to mindfulness skills and the importance of being able to stay in the moment. Because the describe skill in Dear Man and assertive communication is focusing on being able to describe very clearly to the other person what it is, whether it's an interaction or an emotion or a thought or whatever the case might be. They need to be able to describe it very clearly to the other person and then be able to express what happened and what it is that they need different or to be done differently. So being mindful and being able to stay in the moment is going to be very effective when they're trying to use that describe skill. So an example of being very clear in describing might be, you told me you would be home by dinner, but you didn't get here until 11 o'clock. So that's a very clear example, and I'm describing only facts in that moment. The second skill in Dear Man is express. The express skill is focusing on the client being able to express their feelings and possibly their opinions about the situation. We don't want to assume that the other person knows how we're feeling, so we need to be able to very clearly express and describe what it is that's happening. One of the things to note here is that we talk with clients around the importance of being able to identify, is this a safe person or a safe time for me to express my feelings? There might be some times where it's not in our best interest to share our feelings, whether it's not a safe person or we're out in public or whatever the case may be. So using skills to be able to identify, is this the best time for me to share this? The third skill in Dear Man stands for assert. In this particular skill, we are asserting ourselves by asking for what we want. We might be saying no to a particular request, and we need to be able to say no very clearly. So we don't want to assume that others are going to figure out what it is that we want, or if we're using confusing language, our message might not be very clear. And we often talk to clients about, if we're not clear, we've kind of left the door open a little bit for people to keep pushing. And if we leave that door open, it leaves us vulnerable to maybe not being able to stick to our values. We might experience more pressure to a particular request, and then we don't feel as comfortable in saying no. So if we say no very clearly, it doesn't leave the door open for someone to keep pushing and possibly convince us to participate in something that we're not prepared to do. So an example might be, I would really like it if you would call me when you're going to be late. So if we go back to that dinner example, I've already described what's happened. Now I'm asserting what it is I need instead of what actually happened. The fourth skill is reinforce. This skill focuses on a reward, possibly. We might be reinforcing their willingness to go along with our request. So we want to provide some sort of a reward to them, possibly. So when we offer a reward to someone, we might be sharing with them, like, what would be the positive if they were able to adhere to our request. So for example, it's my week to clean the toilets, but I know that I'm going to be working late every night. I'm not going to have a lot of time. I might ask my roommate, hey, do you think that that's something you could do for me? And I'll do my chore and yours for the next 2 weeks. So finding some sort of balance in there or reward for the other person is going to be important. It's also necessary to clarify any negative consequences if the other person isn't able to adhere to our request. So I would be so relieved and a lot easier if you did call ahead and let me know that you're not going to be home in time for dinner. Okay. The fifth skill is staying mindful. I always joke with clients and say mindfulness will always come back to haunt you. It will always be the skill that we need to use in any other of the DBT skills that we're accessing. And Dear Man is going to be no different. It's going to be really important that we stay present in the moment, that we are focusing on the facts only so that we can use that very first skill to be able to describe, or the second skill to be able to express the emotions that we're experiencing. So keeping our focus on the present moment as well as our goals when we enter into a conversation or an interaction with someone. So what is it that I want to get out of this particular conversation? Maintaining our position as well, because if we don't maintain our position, if we go in saying this is what I'm not willing to do, or this is what I need, and we waver on that too much, we might be going against our values, and again, that's going to be eroding that self-respect. And we've already said that very first block around self-respect and those fast skills is extremely important. It's the foundation, and if it starts to crumble, we're not able to access as effectively those give skills, so active listening, or these Dear Man skills, which are going to help us to communicate assertively. Something else we talk about with our clients when it comes to mindfulness, if they feel like they're getting off track in the conversation or they're having a hard time kind of sticking to the original goal, is to use the technique we call broken record. So coming back to their original goal, the original purpose of the conversation, and just sticking with that over and over and over again. So giving the same message so that they can't be sidetracked by the other person. This could be effective if they're experiencing kind of a verbal attack from someone else, so someone's name calling or threatening them, those kinds of things. So just being able to stick to the original message, no, I can't do that, no, I can't do that, or whatever the case may be. The second last skill in Dear Man is appearing confident. In this skill, we stress the importance of our nonverbal cues. They're at times more important than the things that we're saying. So we talk to clients about the importance of speaking clearly, making eye contact, and in some cases we encourage them to maybe create a script. Maybe they practice ahead of time, maybe they do it in front of the mirror so that they can see what their physical presentation looks like. And in some instances, maybe they choose a safe person in their life that could help them, that they could practice that particular script with so that they feel more confident going into the conversation. If we are feeling more confident when we enter into that conversation, we are less likely to flex on those values. And again, that very first building block, we're going to be able to keep that solid if we're not flexing on our values and we're not being swayed by somebody. The very last skill in Dear Man is negotiate. Negotiation is about being willing to give in order to get. So is there some sort of compromise that I can offer to the other person so that we're both getting something? We're both having our needs met in some way. So if I'm going to be willing to give to get, some things I might choose to do are to lessen my request. So maybe I don't ask for as much. Is there something in there that I might be able to let go of? So we might talk about picking our battles. Is this something I really need? Is this a non-negotiable? And is there any kind of wiggle room in there? We can also say no, but still offer something in return. So I don't have to adhere to this particular request or agree with it, but is there something else I might give instead? Is there something else I might be willing to do for that person? Sometimes clients express frustration around, I've thrown out a bunch of solutions or possibilities, but I'm not getting anything in return. People just keep saying no, no, no. So something else we might encourage clients to do is to ask for the other person to provide some suggestions. So we might say, I noticed that none of the suggestions I have given fit for you. I'm wondering what you think would be best in this situation. What do you think you would be willing to do here? So sometimes that can be an effective strategy.